Los Angeles City Fire Department. They save lives to make sure that during flood season, no one gets hurt. As Councilor LaBonge has said many, many times over, it's a dangerous place when it rains. It's a place we should not have anyone near the river, and it's their great work that have saved lives in the past, and I want to thank them for their presence and their constant vigilance in this program. Thank you, sir. Department of General Services. Come on up. They have been very instrumental in making sure we understand the properties that we own along the river, looking at how we can be opportunistic in stimulating these properties to complement the Riverfront District vision. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. For you. Department of Recreation and Parks. Come on down. Thank you, sir. Department of Public Works, Bureau of Sanitation. This is one of the pillars. For that advocacy, we have the presence of the River Rangers and much of the good work that speaks to how we change the culture and how the city works and how it can function. I want to thank Mr. Salva for his leadership. Thank you very much. Thank you. Department of Public Works, Bureau of Street Services. Come on down. So as we connect new streets and refurbish the streets and make our streets green friendly corridors, hopefully bike paths and bikeways, pedestrian oriented, is with their support that we'll accomplish that goal. The City of Los Angeles Department of Transportation. Come on down. Thank you, sir. Can you see a whole new bikeway coming down the river? There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Invite the bike coordinator up from DOT too, because you're part of this.
Michelle.
Come on, Michelle.
All of these certificates are signed by Councilman Tom LaBonge, Councilmember Jose Huizar, and myself. And last but not least, Department of Water and Power, who provided the initial $3 million to get the master plan in place. Come on up. Thank you, sir. Another pen for your others. Okay. Okay.
There was one missing from building and safety, so
Okay. And call up David Lauda, and you're in the building and safety. Come on up. Your certificate's being done as we speak.
Use this one. Use this one. He won't know.
Here we go. Just don't read it, okay?
Thank you. Get over here.
I also want to ask Krista from the mayor's office if you can join us. She has been a true hero throughout this process. If I could have her clone 5 times over, I think the river would have been built by now. But thank you very much, Krista. I want you to join us. With that, we'll do a group photo, and then we'll move on.
Good job. Okay.
Come on up to the table. You've seen the council do this every so often, right? Come on up.
Is this a river committee here?
Be shy. Sideways pose. Pretend you're in the Little League.
I'm short.
Hey, city planner, I want you to
I know.
Cap, come over here. This spot right here. You're wanted in Indiana, huh?
Is our ranger visible?
Yeah.
Come on up.
For sure. Okay, I'm gonna squeeze you a little bit.
Riverly?
I lost my liver in the LA River.
That hurts.
Just trying to get
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Last but not least, I want to thank Jill Soriel from my office and Lupe Vela for their hard work. Let's give a round of applause for Lupe Vela and Jill Soriel from District 1. Thank you very much. And as we reassemble, Council President Garcetti has played a strong role throughout the years, as well as John Perry, a former member of this committee. So I want to thank them for their stewardship getting us to this point. Okay, so that takes care of item number 1. And I don't see any cards on item 1, so we'll move on to item number 2. And can we read that into the record, please?
City planning report relative to the California high-speed rail alignment and station options for the city of Los Angeles. This item was continued from your September 14th meeting.
Great. So we do have a City Planning Department. You have a report on this. I believe when we started, we just summarized what was stated and perhaps come forward with that report.
Afternoon, Councilman Reyes. My name is Nick Marisich, City Planning Department. Patricia Defender for also with City Planning. And we're here today regarding a staff analysis of the high-speed rail alignment and station options for the City of Los Angeles. Staff presented a report on this topic to the Hoc River Committee on September 14th and was given direction from the committee to continue investigating feasible station options for downtown LA with other city departments and with the MTA. Consideration of the report's recommendations was continued to today's meeting. Wanted to update you in the time since the September 14th meeting of this committee. Staff from City Planning have met with staff from the Department of Water and Power to discuss potential impacts to their city facilities. Staff from City Planning, Bureau of Engineering, Department of Transportation, and the Community Redevelopment Agency have been meeting in a group with the MTA to assist in the process of identifying a viable alternative station location, and have been meeting frequently in order to meet the Rail Authority's timeline for including this alternative in the draft environmental impact statement, environmental impact report. Also, per Councilman Labange's direction on September 14th, facility staff from the LA County Sheriff's Department were also a part of these discussions. The group is exploring alternative platform locations and configurations that place a primary emphasis on rail customer convenience and intermodal connectivity, while also resulting in a north-south alignment with minimum community impact. Today, staff would like to reiterate the recommendations of the report, which requests that the council provide further direction to continue working with city departments and Metro to explore the possibility of a Union Station East Vignes Station option, continue working with other city departments to provide a formal comment letter to the High-Speed Rail Authority on the recently released draft alternatives analysis reports, and also to work with the Department of Transportation and their consultant to prepare comments on project alternatives and develop feasible mitigation options. We're available to give a more extensive summary of the report if desired and answer any questions you may have.
What I'd like to do is ask Councilman Labange if you have any questions for you. I have some questions or comments, then we'll ask for public comment, and then we can circle back with you.
We haven't had a chance to speak, but in my analysis of the situation, and I don't know if MTA is here, because could MTA give us a little briefing on what their thinking is? Because I think there was a plan to consolidate the light rail line out of Midway Yard into another yard.
Yes, sir. I can't speak to that. I will tell you that we've been looking at the concerns raised so far about Union Station. We've convened, maybe I should introduce myself first. I'm sorry. I'm Alex Clifford, MTA. I'm the Executive Officer of High Speed Rail. It's a fairly new position created.
Okay, so you're not going to respond to his question, but you're going to add something else.
Just specifically on were you asking specifically on the process at Union?
Well, I met with someone from MTA who had they talked about a yard consolidation of both high-speed rail and the light rail yard. It's presently up north, what they call Midway Yard. In that, they also talked about a development in Chicago, which was done that created Millennium Park on top of rail yards. In that also was discussion that the strong belief of this planner at MTA was that everything should be at Union Station, as opposed to having a bifurcated location due to the rail, heavy rail, bus, et cetera, that all goes into Union Station. Your position is like 3 months old, or how old?
Yes, sir.
So it's just real, it said the board hasn't, I don't know if I'm still an MTA board director right now. I was appointed last week when we had the subway vote. But there's no official position of the board as of yet?
There is not at this particular time on...
Can I take a little privilege here? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to the City Council chambers Dr. Jack Ramsey, the great coach with the NBA world champions, both in Philadelphia and in Portland. That's Carolyn Ramsey, his wonderful daughter, who's a great aide in the 4th District. But,
Welcome, Mr. Ramsey.
Yeah, Coach Jack Ramsey. Give him another big hand, Hall of Fame basketball coach. Thank you. Now, here's the question, though. Have you studied this at all yet?
As far as the consolidated yard, there is...
No, as you studied where the discussion on this issue here that we held up to today is the request that there be more extensive studies on alternatives to Union Station.
Yes, sir.
Does the MTA believe there's an alternative, or do they believe that Union Station is the location that we should only look at?
Yes, sir. To clarify, we believe Union Station is the location where high-speed rail should interface. There's great intermodal connectivity at that point. Now, the discussion revolves around where the platform should be. And so the proposal within the High-Speed Rail Authority is a platform over the Metrolink tracks, which makes a lot of sense for intermodal connectivity and is common throughout the world, as I understand it. However, in looking through this process that we've engaged in now, we've had 3 meetings with the various city departments that we've coordinated. We're exploring another Union Station platform. So we're not in any way proposing some other station other than Union Station. There is an observation that possibly a Vignes alignment of a platform, which is still connected, still has all that intermodal connectivity, might make some sense.
So studies should continue on that.
Right,
Okay.
When you've worked with EIRs, especially of this scale, wouldn't posturing the project, wouldn't it behoove us to understand what options mean, what alternatives can do?
Yes, sir, and I think that's what we're doing with the city departments, is we're exploring what different options could do and what the ramifications of each of those tweaks might be.
And that's what I'm trying to advocate. If you're done with the questions, I can ask the planning staff to come back.
Yeah, I will. I just want to hear the MTA, but it's still not official yet on that. Your board hasn't taken an action.
Correct.
Right.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Planning staff. Now, when we talk about the recommendations, I just want to, for the sake of disclosure and transparency, so we need to understand how this line is going to impact the city of Los Angeles. Can you just start off with which communities will be impacted as this line comes into Los Angeles, into Union Station, and as it leaves Union Station through the city? Are you familiar with which neighborhoods will be affected?
Good afternoon, council members. Patricia Diefender for the Department of City Planning. As we noted in the report, we talked about the station location and then the alignments going south, or coming in to the station from the south, and leaving the station to the north. I mean, essentially, we're talking about, it enters the city down by Boyle Heights, and it stays along the river for the great majority of the time. At about 4th Street, it starts to elevate. It starts to go away, sort of come west, away from the river.
So it affects downtown to a degree up to the river.
Right. It affects downtown. It affects loosely, I think what you would call parts of Little Tokyo, sort of northerly parts of the Artist
Is
District.
the Little Tokyo site where it impacts the CRA's investments?
I'm not sure about the CRA investments, but it does go near a Buddhist temple in Little Tokyo, so that's one of the concerns that we identified and that we've heard in different forums. And then, of course, going to the north, the alignment to the north, it has potential impacts for the river and the communities along the river to the north and south. There's...
And this part of the district is what affects mine, in which we look at its real effect on the rural specific plan and how the infrastructure is going to be designed, which we don't know much about yet.
Right.
And it affects the alignment in terms of, and I want to thank the Rail Authority because they've given us 2 options, and they've been very clear there hasn't been any commitment to any option yet. It's up for study. They're working with community folks. Below trench is one possibility, and the other possibility is an aerial structure. So these are options that they've spoken, at least to me and my office, about. But as it goes north, it goes through Lincoln Heights, a little piece of Chinatown, Lincoln Heights, Cypress Park, Glassell Park, then up into Griffith Park area, Atwater Village. And can you do you have a list of communities? If you don't, that's a report back I'd like to get.
Okay. We don't have a list of communities, other than what we identified in this study. And I just want to note that one of the reasons we didn't do a map was because when we gave the initial report last time, the high-speed rail preceded us, and they had a PowerPoint slide with the alignments, and we don't want to represent their alignment. I think
no, but I think as form of information to start informing folks as to the positives and the negatives, we should understand which neighborhoods will be impacted.
Absolutely, and we can certainly do that for the future and submit that to the committee.
Okay.
Primarily, we did an analysis of the station area and the segments. We can give you a more detailed summary if you like. We presented a summary of the analysis that we did at the last meeting, and we can do that again for you if you like.
Right.
But essentially, we wanted to make sure we didn't take too much time of the committee's time, and so we just summarized for you what the recommendations of the report.
Please.
Do you have a written report?
Okay. Yeah, there was a written report submitted on September 8th, and it was presented to the committee on September
Does the staff have
September
another copy?
14th
We give it
meeting.
to Councilmember Labange.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joe.
So simply, staff was reiterating the recommendations of that report and asking for this committee's further direction and action
Right.
on our recommendation.
I did review the audio on the last meeting, and I just want to be very clear on a couple of things. One is that a project of this scale, I believe, within the EIR legally requires that we have an understanding of options, especially we're talking about community impact. So that to me is a very basic notion. And to not see options or alternatives studied, I don't understand, because I believe it leaves the door open to other legal actions through other parties who might feel that full disclosure was not made available to the community. We're talking about the amount of change, physical change, either to the Union Station or any other location. I don't have a favorite option. I'm not advocating not to go to Union Station or to go to Union Station. What I'm advocating is understanding these options so that I understand, as a council member of the 1st District, how it will affect some very sensitive areas that this state and this city has invested in. So if it's going to leave Union Station, how does that affect the river? How does that affect the close to $80 million of state park investment? Now, and I'm just assuming many things when I make the following statement. But if the current drawings are what we have in front of us, my understanding is that the rail is going to come in on an aerial structure. That aerial structure has to be as high as, and I'll let the authority share this, but it has to be pretty high, at least 2 to 3 stories high, if it's going to be in and around the rail Union Station. Now, when it leaves, it has to leave in a manner in which this alignment can be sustained. So that means I foresee huge structures being built as it leaves Union Station, and it's either going to cross the park or it's going to cross the Mead housing area, or it's going across Department of Water and Power's property, but it's going to be a significant presence in a specific plan that's just beginning to realize itself. Now, as it goes up the river, is it going to take out the old city jail? In the process, we'll lose bilingual foundation of the arts, as one example. As it continues north, what does it do to the LA River Center? What does it do to the embankment infrastructure? Will we have the ability to ever change how the hydrology functions in this corridor? And will we be limiting ourselves to implement stormwater harvesting technologies, to be able to introduce natural habitats? What does this infrastructure mean in its scale? Now, if we're going to go over the Golden State Freeway and the Pasadena Freeway, if those are options, does that mean this area is going to span into those heights? Something has to hold it up. So or if it's going to go below grade, what does that mean for the surface of our streets? Do we improve circulation? Do we bring down the other rail lines with us, or don't we? What does it mean? So in this EIR, it stops at Union Station. And legally, everything that else happens will happen afterwards. But we will be stuck with a defined route. That's why I'm advocating for options.
Patricia Diefender for Department of City Planning. I just wanted to follow up on some of the things that you mentioned. I think this is the reason why we're undertaking the coordination that we've been undertaking. We are working with Metro to identify a second station location and alignments leading to and from that are viable and that potentially have less impact on some of the things that that you've just mentioned,
right,
so that we present that to the High-Speed Rail Authority with the intent that they would study it as a second station, as a second option in the EIR, because we share the concerns.
So my concerns really aligns with the whole corridor in the city of Los Angeles, which incorporates many of these communities, and it essentially calls out the impacts along the corridor, and that now is the time to study that so that we can be competitive on a nationwide level, so that we can create jobs and build this facility, this high-speed rail, in a manner in which has the greatest chances of being done. But we have to do it in an informed way. We have to leverage its presence, if that's the way it's going to go. But give us a chance to understand its impact. And so therein lies the essence of why I'm raising these issues. And I think what I've been trying to do has been misinterpreted, or folks are misinformed. But it really is about having this inclusive process and understanding that the way the EIR is defined now, it literally stops at Union Station. But thanks to the High-Speed Rail Authority, they've been able to look at a section beyond it up to, I believe it's Fletcher Drive, right before Griffith Park. And so that alignment issue has been recognized, and those sensitivities are being addressed. But it doesn't seem like within the legalities of the EIR and its scope of work.
May I add one other comment? Patricia Diefender, again, from the Planning Department staff. Ultimately, it is going to be the High-Speed Rail Authority that's going to have to study the impacts of any station and alignment. Consistent with, I think, the direction so far we've received from this committee and from the concerns that we've compiled from meeting with various staff of the city departments, the desire is to get a second option studied as part of the EIR so that we have a wider range of options and we know what the pros and cons of each and the impacts potentially are of each. And that is the objective. And if just to address Councilmember Labange's comment, the alignments and the station location that are being looked at as part of this working group that's working together, and that consists of various departments of the city and Metro and county facilities, staff people have also been there. The main objective, or the alignments and the station location that is being looked at, are very near. I understand the desire very much to have it
But
right
I just
at
will let you
Union
know there's a
Station.
thing called the Green Line. It was a
Right.
big failure of our generation.
Absolutely.
Just before us, but
Right.
it was a decision that, the closest I know, is it was said that the airport commission at the time didn't want the rail line to dictate the master plan that's now being evolved in peace. So I just would just say this. I believe it's important, as you look at this right here, if you're on the top line is the high-speed rail, and you get off and you get on the Metrolink, and you go to wherever that goes. And then you get off at the main line, and you go on a bus system, or you get on the underground, which is the Metro rail, and you go to wherever you do. If you're across the river, that's a distance to go to. The only thought I would say, if you study, is the subway yard where the subway sleeps at night. If there was some, because Union Station got its name as Union Station by the consolidation of the Santa Fe, the Union Pacific, and the Southern Pacific into one location. And it was a big multi-year task, and they relocated a whole community. That's why when you go to Chinatown, you see the signs that say New Chinatown, because Old Chinatown was there. But the only thought this here is if, with the existing, and you're from MTA, and right now, if we really wanted to help the people, we could extend the red line down to 4th and Santa Fe with a platform station right now where your subway yard is right now. But if there was a high-speed rail yard built above the subway yard, it would impact views from SciArc, it would impact views from whoever had property there, but it would be a place. Infrastructure is real important. The rail lines have been there for 125 plus years, and how they go. I absolutely believe when you go north of Broadway that it should transition at grade and then below grade, and we have to deal with the infrastructure of the Golden State Freeway that exists there. That when it goes through the Rio State Park, which you have really done a tremendous job, or I heard from kids this weekend telling me about how they play soccer there and they love it, that has to be underground and covered. And then when you go further north on the existing San Fernando right-of-way, which truly is about San Fernando, it's as old as the road almost. It parallels much of San Fernando Road all the way through the cities of Glendale and Burbank, and then back to Los Angeles cities, the neighborhoods of Sun Valley, Pacoima, Sylmar, and beyond. That's existing, that we do whatever we can to combine those rail lines together. But the only thing I would like to see is, if you want to study, and I know it's good to study, but I hope the study is not a year. I don't want to miss the train on this. I don't want to miss the train on the opportunity we have to try to connect California. The things about rail lines that they do is they connect and energize cities. So I think it's real important whether it's the Vignes site, which MTA spoke of. I hope you look at if you're at least above the subway line, because I hope one day the subway line that stops at 4th Street, really at 6th Street right now, there could be a stop today at 6th and Santa Fe, which should be a platform station. Because we got to remember, BART in San Francisco is, let's say, 128 miles of a system in the Bay Area. That's just a number, but like 68 is underground, and the rest goes to Livermore down the center of the freeway. Our metro rail system one day will be coming down. When I spoke with Caltrans, the reconfiguration of the 5 freeway does call for possibly the metro rail extension south. We know that South Los Angeles, in the 5 cities, in Southgate, Huntington Park, Bell Gardens, mostly populated, needs transit connection, which is so important. So those are things to think of. But I absolutely believe, if you look, and I just thought about it listening to everyone's discussion right now, because my priority is to make sure we're on that subway line, because that's going to feed the bulldog, so to speak. That being said, maybe looking at 4th and Santa Fe in that area, so you don't have this infrastructure that is basically 65 feet. I guess the infrastructure for the light rail is about 35 feet or whatever we did when you were deputy coming through Chinatown there. But maybe that's an alternative to look at, that you're still in Union Station with the system that you could connect to. But you have to study that. I just have trouble going east of the river, but I also would like to ask you to check with MTA, because I know that there's a vision that they share somewhere, a planner, who has this midway and a whole park above it. You've seen all that?
Right.
So.
Right, and again, this is, well, let's do this. We'll ask the staff to sit down, and we'll do public comment, then we'll finish up.
Yeah.
Now we can get, if any more questions arise from public comment, we'll ask you to come on back.
Thanks.
So, thank you very much. So we'll have Dr. Clyde Williams, then we'll have Vaughn Davies, and then we'll have Arthur Golding. 2 minutes, please. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. I lived at Union Station for almost 3 to 5 years during the construction of Red Line Phase 1, the tunnel, the station, and the portal up to the yard. And this high-speed rail, which is now becoming real to everybody, can't work. They drew a line on a map without ever walking the route. 6th Street Viaduct. How do you get over the 6th Street Viaduct, or do you go through it? There is a route that can go underground. If you go underground south of 6th Street, then go all the way under US 101. There is a space between the MTA tower on one side and Piper Tech Center on the other side. There is a space, and if you stay underground from there, go straight north from, the county jail, go straight north, and you wind up at the north side of San Fernando Road and Glendale Freeway without coming above ground. If you go above ground, you got to go over the 6th Street Viaduct, over 101, over Union Station platforms with enough clearance, past the tower, and then you got to turn. You got to go over all of the Gold Line tracks and such like that. You have to go under the power lines along the LA River. You have to go over the LA River. Then the railroads, by the way, so you even higher there. And then Interstate 5, do you go under or over? So it doesn't seem like a reasonable alternative to do it anything other than going underground. And here are some concepts that were done for the Muni Railway in Chinatown in downtown San Francisco.
Thank you, sir.
And, oh, by the way, Oakland decided to go above ground, Berkeley decided to go below ground with the BART 40 years ago, and it was the best decision that we ever made in
you, sir.
Berkeley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Vaughn Davies. And please introduce yourself. And
I'm Vaughn Davies, an architect and urban designer in Los Angeles, and spent many years working on Union Station. I am here representing myself, but I do work for a company downtown that's looking at rail projects in LA.
so you're a private person,
Correct.
not affiliated with any agency and/or company?
No.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate what you've all been saying, that this is a huge opportunity for Los Angeles to really reinvent itself as a great urban downtown. All cities that have had high-speed rail come into them, Paris, London, Tokyo, other cities, have done it in a surgical fashion rather than a sort of a heavy-handed engineering fashion. I think this is truly one of those moments where we can help revitalize the river and build on a few other projects in Los Angeles that really would create a first-class gateway into our city. I brought a couple of exhibits that I wanted to share with you. The notion of Union Station being a great transit-oriented district in downtown. This is really not a plan, but to illustrate some of the huge opportunities that, as you were mentioning, it really affects everything up into the cornfields and downtown. But I'm going to leave these with you. And I think the EIR needs to study the parking as a huge opportunity for all the communities around Union Station. There are two other projects in Los Angeles, too, that we believe should be studied as an opportunity to really connect downtown, covering up the freeway, the Park 101 project, which looked at an opportunity to get to LA River, and taking the high-speed rail over the freeway may preclude us from doing this in the future. So this is another thing that should be studied with the plans moving forward and the comprehensive look that you suggested. The first phase of this plan has already been moved to the next stage by the adoption of a PSR, which is a preliminary planning report by Caltrans. So that's already been begun to move forward, and it's looking at the decking of the freeway, the opportunity to deck over the freeway, and joining El Pueblo Union Station to downtown.
Thank you. How long ago was that?
The PSR was complete a number of years ago, but the PSR is still active.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have Arthur Golding on this item.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Arthur Golding, 2548 North Catalina Street, Los Angeles. I'm an architect, and I'm here representing only myself today. I'd like to commend the committee for its attention to this critically important matter. I think I'm starting from the same place that you are, that this high-speed rail is very important for the future of Los Angeles and for the future of California. And it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it is critically important to get it right. I'm very encouraged, Councilman Reyes, by your comments regarding the adequacy of EIR study and consideration of alternatives. My view is that Union Station is where it must be, but how it comes into and out of Union Station is critical. And I think subterranean is the only thing that will not make huge disruptions. The prospect of this thing flying over the intersection of the 5 and the 110 is just, it boggles the mind. And the destruction it could bring to Rio de Los Angeles State Park and to Los Angeles State Historic Park and to development opportunities all around there is very, very great. I'd also like to caution you to think a little bit about alternatives, major alternatives to rail yard. There is no need for a rail yard for high-speed rail to be located in downtown Los Angeles. It can be in Anaheim, where the land is a lot cheaper, and there's a lot more of it. If the first leg is Anaheim to Los Angeles, there is no reason not to consider the yard and maintenance facilities being in Anaheim rather than in LA. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that concludes the presentation of public comments. Stop just for some points. And anything else on that, Councilman LeBron, so I can close on this?
Does anybody with the high-speed rail want to address any of this here?
I didn't see any cards, so that's why I didn't call them up. But
It's all right.
good afternoon.
Valerie Martinez with the California High-Speed Rail Authority. I didn't fill out a card because everything was being spoken or addressed pretty fully. Essentially, we are working with Metro, we are working with the city to try to develop a second alternative so that in fact we can potentially have another option in our draft EIR-EIS. The goal at the end of the day is to make sure that it's a feasible option and a superior option to LA Union Station. But at the end of the day, we're working very, very hard. We're doing what we can to make sure that it gets into the draft EIR-EIS.
Ms. Martinez, I do want to say thank you. We spoke about 6 months ago maybe, and as a result of those meetings, we did see a greater perspective as to what the alignments can look like, and now it's drilling down time to what the legal documents will look like, and that's why I'm pushing as hard as I am.
Sure. Actually, we would love to meet with you even more often, frankly, because I know that your first priority is just ensuring that the communities are aware of what's happening and that you're aware as a representative of the impacts that the high-speed rail may have on those communities. So we'll meet as often as you'd like just to ensure that we are working in tandem because, again, as long as we know, our goal is to minimize impacts as well. The more information we have, the more we can do to minimize those impacts.
Thank you.
But in some cities, I've been fortunate to be in Berlin. When Berlin was divided, there was multiple train stations. When they came together again 20 years ago, they built one main station. And as far away as, let's say, Glendale, in reference to where Union Station is now, in Berlin, you would leave the surface of the earth and go in underground, and then all of a sudden you're in the bottom of the station and you're all connected. Have you looked at tunneling, as Mr. Golding just spoke of and others spoke of, and the gentleman who spoke of the fear of heavy infrastructure that precludes us for 100 years?
Tunneling through downtown LA is particularly difficult because we have such heavy infrastructure beneath the ground. We have the Red Line under Union Station. We have a whole, we have a whole box beneath there, in addition to all the different utilities and all the different elements that are actually located underneath. It's something that we have definitely looked at. Frankly, if we could do that, we're having constructability issues. Frankly, if it were something that could be engineered, it would be terrific because it would eliminate some of the things that we've talked about. Unfortunately, we have
preliminarily look at that in some respect, because I don't want to. I think what the city council needs is a fair assessment of what availability is, even to take the next step to see if it's deeper. If there's constructability challenges that are real, I understand that. There's infrastructure, as we mentioned, the Golden State Freeway. I don't see how you could put a bridge over. Is it going to be at level at San Fernando and that? What impact that has? I know you have a bridge project going on there in the next short years that's going to have an impact on that area. So I think it has to look at it. Another question I wanted to ask as a representative, we are having trouble now because of our financial challenges of key people not being available. Would you see the authority funding positions in the city to be your liaison, similar to what, like when we built Metro Rail, the MTA did hire and fund positions so that they always had a live liaison.
I think the High-Speed Rail Authority is very interested in ensuring that we're building the best possible system. And so anything that would promote that end result is something that we're open to. If that's something that the City of Los Angeles would like to have a discussion about, I'm sure that the High-Speed Rail Authority would be interested in talking.
Last question. I got a postcard from you. Say you canceled the...
We did.
What's the plan on that?
Well, what we wanted to do is circle around, have some conversations with Metro, make sure we were having conversations with the individual council members before we had conversations with the community. And what we're trying to do in our effort to try to make sure we are communicating with community members, again, we want to make sure that we are doing so, but in a way that's structured and in alignment with...
When's your plan to go back to the community?
Hopefully within the next month.
All right,
but again, let me just say that we also have holidays coming up. So what we don't want to do is, of course, set them up at a time.
But you may want to have a community leadership meeting and just invite community leaders to have it at the River Center or something. Rent a room there just to get to know people and say this process is going to take time on that. But have you also met with the railroads?
Yes, we have.
And is there a chance to combine rail lines together in this?
A chance to combine rail lines
together. Let's say through Taylor Yard area, that conceivably, I would hope you would see the value for your success is to trench that through, as Mr. Reyes so eloquently speaks about this space that he's truly, and I'm just speaking as like these kids who loved it so much, but to try to take that away, to go underground at least through that area, and then you have I want to create a safe corridor of grade crossings that are not at grade but underground viaducts the rest of the way through. That's your challenge. You got to really look at that, and then and continue to dialogue with us all.
The conversations specifically through Taylor Yard include conversations with UP, with Metrolink, and with Metro. And those conversations have been happening, and we're working very hard to try to do everything we can to minimize impacts, including trenching. We've come up with an idea that with a cut and cover and that sort of thing. There's some unique challenges through that area, as there are, frankly, throughout but we're doing everything we can. But frankly, there may come a point when it's vital that we join forces with Metro and the City of LA as we talk to UP, because I know that UP has some very specific ideas about what they want to do with their alignments.
What's pivotal here is that, and this is a legal concern of mine, and that is it's risky to establish a legal precedent that does not fully inform the public and provide sufficient data for evaluation. That is what we need to see. How do we evaluate what data is in front of us, and how is it that we make these decisions? Now, it's one thing to draw a line on a piece of paper. It's another thing to understand the property owner's rights, the environmental issue, the historic issue, and all of the other investments have already occurred. And without that proper data, without the proper evaluation, it is it's very risky legally. So that's what I'm trying to focus on, because I would hate to lose the jobs. I would hate to lose this opportunity to leverage this resource to do something better than just a bunch of giant posts holding up a rail track so that they can go as fast as they can.
Agreed.
And that's all we're saying on that end. Any other questions for Ms. Martinez?
Not right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The other point I wanted to make, and that this is important to all the agencies. I know the Department of Transportation has brought in a transportation consultant in order to assist in the review of the plans. And Metro is also funding a study to assess opportunities for their mission. I need to find ways to fund the planning department so they can be lockstep with this level of analysis. So that's something that we need to push forward, because I don't have that kind of funding at the moment for the planning department. In terms of the city road to its residents, like we said, it's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can create a multi-transit port that accomplishes many benefits. I've already mentioned the jobs, economic development, community revitalization, riverfront development, and neighborhood engagement. So there are several unanswered questions that we're looking for, and the city has a primary role in addressing these issues and how we define the benefit and how we look at this wonderful opportunity. So it is my intent that this committee take the action of moving the planning reports forward to the city council, and that would be my action, council member. Or if you have any other?
Second.
Okay. So that'll be the action of this committee. Did you want to say something?
And just to say, Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
reserve the right to fully read this so I could comprehend it, and I will have questions in council.
Absolutely, absolutely. It'll be a lively discussion. Sir?
Council members, Nick Marisich from City Planning. Just wanted to respond to a couple of the public comments that were made, and make a few clarifications. With regard to the station location alternatives that we're currently assessing, one of the things that we're trying to do is evaluate those in conjunction with Metro in the time frame that the High Speed Rail Authority is working at. So we are committed to meeting with them frequently to try to come up with a viable option so that it can be inserted into the draft environmental document, which we understand is to be released next year. So we're working with the constraint of that timeline, and that's.
Can you say that one more time?
We're constrained by the High Speed Rail Authority's timeline for the preparation of their environmental. And so we are trying to work as quickly as possible to determine whether we have a viable station alternative that we can have them study in their draft environmental impact.
Here's an important piece of information. What is the time frame? Because I want to make sure that the folks who are listening and folks who are engaged in this discussion, that they understand what limitations exist from a time frame point of view. So what are the milestone deadlines?
The High Speed Rail Authority could probably speak to it better, but our understanding is that they are anticipating the draft EIR to be released in the spring of 2010. And we are working to get that an identified station option to them well ahead of that time so that they can adequately analyze it and consider its impacts.
So as a result of what they're proposing, the community, the city, and all affected parties would have to respond by spring of 2010.
Well, I think that when the draft environmental impact report is released in the spring, then there will be the opportunity for the city as well as the community members to review the stated impacts, whatever they may be, and comment on them formally before they prepare a final.
But right now is the time to talk about the scope of that project and how it's going to affect.
Yes.
Okay, now is the time to do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and whether or not they will be studying more than one option,
And
which
whether
is
or not
what
they'll be
we're
studying,
trying
okay.
to.
Advocate.
The other
Okay.
quick point I just wanted to make, I know there was some question about the location, the range of station locations, and we are not currently assessing any station locations on the east side of the river. We are only looking at those station locations that would be connected to Union Station on the east side of the station itself, but this is the west side of the river.
And that's the current.
That's the range of alternatives that we're
Okay.
looking at right now.
Okay. So this committee is taking this action, and I thank you again for your support, and stay tuned. I really believe we're all trying to do the best for this city, for this region, and having this facility. The question is how we're going to do it. I think that's very important. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3.
3, Bureau of Engineering status report relative to the establishment of the Los Angeles River Special Projects Office, as well as City Planning Department progress report on the implementation of Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan.
We have various departments like to come on up. Hello, Dr. Armstrong. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilman Reyes. Carol Armstrong with the Bureau of Engineering LA River Project Office. I'm going to go ahead and get started and just briefly run through our regular progress report
Please.
and touch on a couple of highlights. As you know, we're meeting regularly with the County of Los Angeles to discuss the future possibilities for a river master use agreement, which would cover the entire 32 miles of the river within the city. Those meetings are ongoing, and our next meeting is scheduled for October 28th. And as a follow-up to the River MOU that was approved by the City Council and by the County Board of Supervisors, there is now the newly established River Cooperation Committee, and that first meeting is going to be scheduled likely in early January. Regarding the River Foundation, there's a group of individuals, young leaders from the Jewish Federation. They're called the New Leaders, and they are focusing on the River Foundation. What they want to do is see what our plans are as established in the master plan and to give us some ideas they have regarding strategic fundraising and next steps. So we hope to hear more from them later this fall.
Great.
And regarding the River Revitalization Corporation, we're very excited that the first board members have been appointed, and I know that Jason Neville from CRA is going to cover that more. I don't want to call anyone out in particular, but we're very excited to have our very first board member here today with us. Regarding the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study, we have finalized the project management plan, and the city engineer has signed that and moved it on to the Corps of Engineers for their signature. And that means that we can move forward in finalizing the study, which, as you know, we hope to finish in the next 2 years. The LA District of the Corps has expressed their commitment to that schedule as well, and they are going to proceed as though they are fully funded. And what that means is they've already issued an NTP to their consultant, and they hope to have public meetings on the study in early December.
For us laypersons, MTP is?
I'm sorry?
You mentioned MTP?
The PMP, I'm sorry.
Okay, what is that?
It's the project management plan that governs the study. It's our
Okay.
agreement with the federal government through the Army Corps of Engineers.
For us Joe citizens out there. Thank you.
And I also wanted to mention that we're very excited about the House of Representatives passing the appropriations bill in early October, which gave us another $717,000 for the LA River Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study, and it also approved $332,000 for the ongoing Headworks Feasibility Study, which is located along the river. And really importantly, we got a new start, which was $100,000 for the river demonstration project in the construction account, which is
Right.
of
But let's talk about that for a second, because I want the citizenry to understand the significance of it in the scale of the billions of dollars that are needed to do the transformation. This money might not sound like a lot, but it is its status as an existing project that allows us to move forward and be competitive for more funds in greater amounts in the future instead of starting all over again. Am I correct in saying that?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's really important to finish the study, because once we finish the study, we will have what's called a recommended project that the federal government supports. And then when we have that recommended project, we will go back to Congress and ask for more money to construct that project.
Right.
And in regard to the demonstration project, we did have $25 million authorized in the Water Resources Development Act of 2007 due to our strong advocacy on the part of our congressional delegation, and particularly Congresswoman Roybal Allard.
And that was 25 million, you said?
25 million,
Okay.
that's right. And now that we have that first 100,000 appropriated, we can begin to develop a concept for that demonstration project and then tap into the rest of that 25 million. So it's quite exciting.
So the city family, get encouraged. This is great news. I know we're in the trenches alone, almost it feels that way. But 25 million is nothing to sneeze at. It's something that it begins us down that pathway. So you've been like the foundation to get us to this point. So again, I congratulate you. But someone is listening and there's a response. And I just want to amplify that point. But thank you, Dr. Armstrong.
Okay, continuing on, some of the river projects we're really excited about. Of course, you've already mentioned the Albion Dairy River Park, which was acquired, the 6-acre parcel in downtown Los Angeles. It's the first acquisition that will demonstrate LA River revitalization within the city. And I want to echo your thanks to the city family for making that happen. The Riverly energy is tremendous every day, but particularly today, so thank you.
Snuck it in there.
And then we're also excited because the Trust for Public Land has taken on a river project, which is the Reseda River Loop, and they will be pursuing funds for that. They've already done some great community outreach for that project in Council District 3. And regarding the North Atwater Park and Sunny Nook River Parks in CD4, they're moving forward. We did have some funds frozen, which are, most of them are becoming available now. Some of them are still frozen, but we're moving forward. I think everyone's aware of the Elysian Valley Bikeway Project in Council District 13, which is under construction now. I also wanted to mention that we have been participating actively in the high-speed rail Authority group within the city, and I'd like to commend planning because I know it's a tough issue. I do think that the high-speed rail project and its relation to the river is probably one of the most important projects the city's going to face for a really long time, so I agree with you, we need to get it right, and I think their report's very well articulated, and I appreciate being involved in that. And we are continuing with our interdepartmental task force on the river meetings. We held one on September 8th, and the next one is next week on November 3rd. And I wanted to report that the city engineer recently participated in the Got Water Symposium at Valley Beth Shalom on October 15th, where he presented to a group there, and also on October 22nd at the Nature Needs Water 2 Symposium, sponsored by the Los Angeles and San Gabriel Rivers Watershed Council and the Aquarium of the Pacific.
Great. So we're spreading the good news. Again, thank you for your hard work. Any questions for Dr. Armstrong?
On the, there was an issue, the Central Service Yard. You know the Central Service Yard? There was an issue to look at that yard, and there was someone's vision to try to move the yard. Are you familiar with that at all?
I am somewhat familiar with that. That's upstream of the North Atwater Park project. It's
Correct.
currently a city Recreation and Parks Department yard. Yes.
Right. And my problem is there, Ed, I would like to see us move the fences back to get a little more right away on the river, but to try to relocate the yard, where do you relocate the yard?
That's a very good question, and that's something that's going to take a lot of analysis. And part of what we want to do with our newly established River Revitalization Corporation is to look at opportunities to move public facilities around. But at this time, we have not identified a location.
I'm taking another public facility on the river at Brazil Street, right up on the river, but it's in an industrial area which is zoned for it. So I just want to tell the chairman, I have trouble having the long vision. I could move fences back to try to make the bikeway, the equestrian way a little better, but to actually create this open space. And also too, Ed, and I don't want to be president, I don't know if anybody lives in Glendale in this room, but I'm more pro-LA than pro right next to Glendale. No offense to Glendale. And if we created this area up there, it would not necessarily serve the people that we represent here in Los Angeles. Glendale's trying to do their part up by Verdugo Narrows, and I just wanted to say, where we can move the fence back, let's do it, but I don't want to see you spend a lot of time thinking about relocating the yard when, A, we don't have the money to do it, there's other priorities that will supersede this, and where we could move the fence back 20 feet, maybe make great sense to get the better deck of the bank of the river. So, bless you. You want some water here?
I am going to get some water. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I read you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're surviving. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Have CRA, Mr. Spivak, and Planning. First, Mr. Spivak, thank you. I'd like to thank Cecilia Solano for your strong stewardship and the skill set and the toolbox you bring to this process.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Council members. Don Spivak from the Redevelopment Agency. A couple of things. One is to speak about what's happening with the River Revitalization Corporation. As you know, the corporation is one of those bodies that was called for in the master plan, and we have been working diligently focusing on the formation of the corporation. The mission of the corporation is to focus on development of parks, open space, housing, retail, and jobs-producing uses along the river. It's one of three management entities called for in the Revitalization Master Plan. The 501c3 corporation now has been formed. There have been 5 members designated to the board of the corporation, which gives us a majority. We're able then to start. With us today is Mr. Harry Chandler, who is one of the members who has been appointed. The articles of incorporation for the corporation have been filed. They were done on October 16th, and we're targeting the 1st of December as the first organizational meeting of the corporation. So we are expecting to move that forward. CRA has committed some funding to assist the corporation in going forward. We're looking at ways in which the staff can be most helpful, and would also be offering to provide some office space for the corporation when it gets going. We've also been working with staff from council offices, the mayor's office, River Project Office, and so forth, city planning and others, on putting together the agenda for that first meeting so that we can get the board up to speed quickly with briefing materials and give them background on their roles, on the work already undertaken, and get them off to a running start. One other area to mention is that CRA staff has begun exploring the possibility of potential new redevelopment project areas along the river, one of them in northeast Los Angeles along the river and San Fernando Road, and one generally in the area of the Cornfields Arroyo Seco specific plan, so that we can explore whether the tools of redevelopment would make sense. We're in a very preliminary stage, and we'll see whether the areas will meet the minimum requirements before we move any further with this.
And again, I want to amplify what you just said, that no decision has been made. We're studying it. There's no commitments. So there is no CRA area there at the moment.
That's correct.
And it's just at the studying phase. So
Precisely.
houses will not be taken, neighborhoods will not be bulldozed, we're not going to shut down any businesses, and none of that. It's just a studying phase.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to be, again, emphatic, because I've been down this road, and it's interesting how things get twisted. But I just want to be very clear about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. And I'd like to take this opportunity and acknowledging and asking Mr. Chandler if he'd like to come to the microphone as part of the member of the newly formed Los Angeles River Corporation. Mr. Chandler, I'd like to come to the microphone. And Mr. Spivak, thank you so much for your stewardship and everything you do for the city. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I guess 2 years ago when I first saw the master plan, it talked about this River Revitalization Corporation, and I got excited. And 2 years later, the mayor appointed me, so I'm delighted to be joining this. For those of you who I haven't met, we're all going to be looking forward to being sort of a catalyst in this effort. All of you who've taken it so far already, we're certainly not going to be able to replicate those great successes, but I'm going to make myself very available, and I'm here today really just to shake some hands and get to start to know the big team that has been working on this. So look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler, for your spirit, for your energy, and we need that positive reinforcement, so thank you, sir.
Can I ask Mr. Chandler to come back up here?
Yes.
When's the first time you could recall as a child you going to the river, or what impressions of the river?
I grew up in Pasadena, so we were around the Arroyo quite frequently, and my father, who was a motorcycle rider when he was the publisher of the LA Times, took us down near the confluence. I don't know how we got there, but we got on the LA River a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator, riding our motorcycles. I think I even had a go-kart in those days on the river, so that was my earliest memory.
You could join our club now. Ed and I did the same thing, but we didn't have motorcycles. We had bicycles and wagons.
We had 2x4s and wheels.
Right, exactly.
That's great.
That's good. I think it's important to be able to do that. We just had a discussion of People for Parks, and we talked about, the Philharmonic has a foundation, the LACMA, the Museum of Art, has a foundation, all the various entities, but have a foundation gives us a place to go to look in such a way in the future to engage other people in it. So it's great to have you here, Harry.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Thank you.
Okay. Planning Department, the unsung heroes. How you doing?
I'm fine. Good afternoon. Claire Bowen, Los Angeles Department of City Planning. You have your report in front of you, but I'm just going to give you some of the highlights. Where, as you know, you guys, we brought in front of you a couple months ago, actually in June, the Los Angeles River Improvement Overlay District. It is still being reviewed by the City Attorney's Office for formal legality. We are hoping that they will be able to give us a response to that fairly soon so we can move it to council, because we're obviously anxious to get that in front of you very soon to see that adopted. Fantastic. We're also continuing to work on the Cornfield Arroyo Seco specific plan that's obviously been mentioned today a couple of times. We are drafting right now the environmental impact report and are hoping to have the draft out for the public comment in the spring of 2010. We're obviously taking a lot of time to make sure that we're analyzing thoroughly the impacts in terms of water and traffic and things like that to make sure we've got a very substantial EIR as we move forward. Their river unit is continuing to work with folks in our planning department, like who are doing the community plan updates, because as you mentioned in the Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan, some of the implementation strategies were to make sure that as we update our community plans, that they become opportunities to enfold into it the goals of the master plans. We were meeting this morning with the Boyle Heights Community Plan, which is being updated right now, which obviously has a large part of the river, as we continue to also meet with folks during the Warner Center specific plan.
Fantastic. I'll stop here. I think we said it, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, how much impact the budget's having on you in particular? And will it be a multi-month setback to much of your success?
The staff shortages, knowing that we're going from 400 to 200.
It all affects us. I think we're all just trying to work very hard and try to be very efficient in our efforts so that we can continue to move things forward in a timely manner. But
And just looking at you, I got an idea, and I don't know, you maybe already had it, Ed. Do we have a relationship with any one of the universities?
yes,
Which one?
we
Quite a
work a
few.
lot with USC and
But
UCLA.
has one said we're going to make it our project yet?
Not in particular. We've been working with most of those universities, largely around TODs and things like that. and
Poly
multi-grants.
Pomona.
There's a new deputy mayor, Eileen Adams, who is in charge, I think, for the mayor of making relationships between universities. We're a
Right.
university-rich region.
Right.
And
Well, actually,
colleges, so,
Oh, former council member Michael Wu is the dean of Cal Poly Pomona.
right.
one of the things actually that we are working on right now, there's actually at Pomona, there's a class that's going to be studying a part of the Arroyo and see if they're doing a student project there. Actually,
Right.
I didn't bring my glasses up here so I can actually read it. They're going to, a graduate Cal Poly Pomona class will study a portion of the Arroyo Seco and develop visions for a potential future Rio district on that stretch.
Great,
And-
all right, so I just think as we move on, that's a great way. Thank you
Right.
very
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Just Dr. Armstrong, real quick, on the bridges that are being scheduled, the Riverside Bridge, is there a time frame when they start? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Councilman, Carol Armstrong, Bureau of Engineering, I'm not sure, but your staffer just whispered to me that it's next year.
Okay. So can we get an update of which bridges are being scheduled for which days?
Yes.
In terms of all years, I should say.
Yes, we will come back with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we can note and file these reports, and there is a card on this one, Dr. Clyde Williams. Before we note and file, come on up, sir.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. Sometimes I get confused. The Board of Public Works and the representative from the Bureau of Engineering says, we don't have any staff to do all of these things. We don't have any staff to do the 710 Tunnel Technical Advisory Committee, but maybe they will. Where's the money coming from? Does the Bureau of Engineering have enough money for the river? How about the high-speed rail? And that's the billion-dollar gorilla sitting in the closet. And finally, people have recognized that it's going to actually happen, somewhat like the 710. And what's it going to affect? Everything from, say, 7th Street all the way to the Glendale Freeway. So if you're going to have a special office for the river, protect CRA, because what will the elevated do to incremental tax revenue? And also for planning department, what's it going to do to the Cornfields Arroyo Seco specific plan EIR that's supposedly in preparation? We've been told in Lincoln Heights and El Sereno a lot of things. We were told that there was going to be a stakeholders meeting last week. Well, that was canceled. So outreach to the neighborhood councils, Glassell Park, Cypress Park, Lincoln Heights, El Sereno, Greater Griffith Park. All of these.
Well, Cypress Park had theirs, so that was, Cypress Park had their meeting, but we're going to continue having it.
But if you're going to have a special office, have it on the high-speed rail, because that's the one that's going to affect everything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Williams, did you hear that they mentioned they postponed them? They're planning to have the meetings in the January, probably. They postponed them.
I hear much and see little. And
I know, but you heard it today here
speak a
first.
lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Item number 4?
Item number 4 is a rural report from the Department of Water and Power relative to the maintenance and operations as they relate to the river.
Okay. DWP, the long walk.
Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
My name is Eduardo Malacon. I am with the Science Department of Water and Power. I am here to provide a report on our maintenance issues. At the beginning of the year, we changed our cycle. We reduced the number of days that we go and do the maintenance routine, checking the areas along the river from 180 days to 45 days. We have been doing that since March. Lately, in the last 60 days, we haven't done it because of the station fires. Our crews were busy dealing with some of the transmission lines, but I talked to them last week. They're going to do it this week. They're going to go back and remove weeds and remove graffiti. We got a complaint for Aliso Creek and Ellie River when they joined that there is some dumping problems, and they couldn't remove it before because of the station fire, but they're going to go there and do it next week. That's what they told me. And that's the main report.
To what extent are you coordinating with the Army Corps of Engineers? They just got a grant to remove graffiti. Is there any discussion or coordination with the Army Corps at this time that you are aware of?
Not. I go to meetings for maintenance. He worked for, what's his name? When there is a meeting in Glendale every month or 2 months, and there are different agencies, and we discuss maintenance. And Army Corps didn't show up last time, so we couldn't discuss this.
Well, that's something I think we need to coordinate and looking for support for the river keepers, and the river sanitation's been there for them. But if we could stimulate a greater discourse, communication between Army Corps and yourselves and how they're going to move that maintenance program, I think it's critical, especially with Department of Water and Power. Okay? Any questions for our representative?
I just want to know how difficult, the transmission on the river is on both sides of the river, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how difficult is that to encase when you remove it? Do you have a vision of moving those transmission lines? Because I think we should start studying, even if whether the high-speed derelict comes or not, the impact of transmission visibly is heavy.
Yes.
So, Mr. Moon, look at that in the future. Next time, give us a report on the parallel transmission lines along the river, what it would cost to bury them, and et cetera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malacon.
Thank you.
Okay, so we could notify his report, and we do have Mr. Clyde Williams for public comment. You've got a card for this and then for general public comment as well.
Okay. El Sereno. DWP, they failed to point out that you also are going to be losing 50,000 acre feet of water a year in the future. And that's 150 acre feet per day, because they're going to recharge it to San Fernando Valley and take it out of the discharges to the channel. Then the urban stormwater people are going to recharge more. They're going to redirect drain spouts so that there's far less water going down the river, so that when they have to treat it for the total maximum daily load requirements, there'll be less flow to treat. So there seems to be a kind of disjunct between the various groups that are dealing with water, especially when it gets down to the Arroyo Seco. So I'd highly recommend that you have a presentation by the urban stormwater people and the groundwater people from DWP. Thank you.
And can I just respond for a second to Dr. Williams, is that the objective of the master plan is how do we look at opportunities to store water, how do we create relationships with those types of decisions that makes a true impact on the infrastructure. So that's, I appreciate your comment. Okay, we will note and file that item. Anyone else here for public comment in general on items that were not on the agenda? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance.